Platting Board now comes to order. It's June 5th, 2013 at 6:30 p.m. And Jill, would you have roll call, please?
Lendl Story. Steve Abel.
Here.
Ken Fuller.
Here.
Daniel Young.
Present.
Brent Cole. Here. Anthony Kane.
Present.
Trevor Edmondson.
Here.
Clayton Walker.
Here.
Christina Enix.
Thank you. We have 2 absences, but we do have a quorum tonight. Are there any agenda changes tonight? The one that I'm aware of is case S11987-1, Denali, Alaskan Federal Credit Union subdivision is postponed indefinitely. May I have a positive motion to support that postponement? Mr. Walker.
I move to postpone the matter S11987. I didn't have my mic on. I move to postpone S11987, Denali, Alaska Federal Credit Union indefinitely. Apparently there is issues with the title of the property.
And Mr. Edmonton seconds. Is there any discussion? Mr. Walker, would you like to speak to your motion, or is,
Only that they've asked that it be postponed until they are able to resolve their title issues.
is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is approvals, and we have we don't have any minutes tonight. I believe we just have an action summary. May I have a positive motion to approve the action summary? Mr. Walker and Mr. Edmondson seconds.
I move to approve the action summary as presented on May 1st, or for May 1st, 2013.
Thank you. Are there any corrections to the action summaries? Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is summary of actions for. I'm sorry. Okay. There's the informational for the short plats. Is there any discussion? We will move on. The next item on our agenda is special order of business, disclosures. Are there any disclosures or conflicts of interest tonight? Mr. Cage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a quick disclosure in case S11998-1, Turker subdivision. It appears that the Alliot Corporation, whom I work for, had owned this parcel at one time and sold it to Mr. Turker, but we have no financial interest. So I just wanted to disclose that. I feel I can act fair in this case, so I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Keynes to participate tonight? Mr. Cole and Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Cole, will you speak to your motion, please?
In the case of S-11998-1 Turker Subdivision Track A. I would move to have Mr. Kange participate in the discussion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, any questions of Mr. Kange? Is there any objection to having Mr. Kange participate tonight? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Kange, you're directed to participate in case S-11998-1. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? I have a disclosure also in case S-11998-1 Turker Subdivision Track A. My firm has had business dealings with the petitioner's representative involving a different property in the past. I have no financial or personal interest in the matters before the board tonight. I can remain impartial in fact and action as a member of the board without a personal bias. My past involvement and personal interests will not prevent me from fairly evaluating the facts of this case. May I have a positive motion directing me to participate tonight? Mr. Cole.
I move to direct Chairman Young to participate in case number S-11998-1 Turker Subdivision Track A.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker seconds. Are there any discussion? Is there any objections? Hearing none and seeing none, the motion passes unanimously, and I am directed to participate. Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? We don't have a consent agenda tonight, and we don't have any pulled consent agenda items. Do we have any unfinished business? So we are now at our regular agenda. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meetings is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal, and I would like to explain how to reserve that time. If you, as an example, if you have 10 minutes and you use 5 minutes, it's automatically there's 5 minutes reserved. If you choose to reserve time at the beginning, for example, you wish to reserve two minutes, then you only have 8 minutes to testify, and then you will also have 2 minutes reserved for your rebuttal. Representatives of groups, community councils, PTAs, etc., have 5 minutes. Individuals have 3 minutes. And we hold the meeting tight, so when the yellow light, is the yellow light working tonight? When the yellow light up here goes on, you have 1 minute left, and I ask that you summarize before your 3 minutes are up. When testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the Platting Board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503 or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. And tonight, we have special circumstances in which, for a reason unbeknownst to me, the overhead projectors are not working. And so I hope that doesn't inconvenience anybody, but we'll try to work with you if you were intending to use the overhead projectors. The first case tonight is case S11998-1, Turker Subdivision. May we have the staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The property owner of 2 lots is seeking to remove the interior lot line and combine them into one tract. The property is zoned B3 General Business District. The property is slated to be redeveloped from its current use as a used car lot to a Walgreens pharmacy. The preliminary plat, a shrink version of it, is on page 9 of the packet, and the underlying plat is on pages 10 and 11 of the packet. The Planning Division has no objection to the requested vacations. One is a 6-foot arterial landscape easement that will be rededicated closer to the street. And also, the Planning Division has no objection to the vacation of a 24-foot access easement. The access easement isn't needed anymore because it served to as access to the northern lot, but since the 2 lots are being combined, it becomes one lot, and it's unnecessary. So the department recommends approval of the vacation of a 6-foot arterial landscape easement and a 24-foot access easement for 18 months, subject to the recording of a suitable replat. That recommendation is on page 6 of the packet. And then, secondly, the department recommends approval of the plat subject to the conditions A through I on pages 6, 7, and 8 of the packet. The petitioner is here to answer any questions, and I'd be happy to answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? We'll now open the public hearing. Would the petitioner please step forward, state your name for the record, spell your last name, please, and let us know if you'd like to reserve time for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Dee High. I'm a local civil engineer and surveyor here in the community. I represent the petitioner here in this matter. My last name is spelled H-I-G-H. So, in this case, this property is located on the northeast corner of Lake Otis and Tudor Road. It's been in a redevelopment process for a number of years. The plat process portion of this is to take 2 lots and combine them into one, covering about 1.4 acres. In addition to the replat, there's 2 vacations we're requesting. One is a 6-foot arterial landscape easement, as mentioned by staff. There's a current easement there based on the replat. We'd like to move that easement closer to the right-of-way so that where it should be as part of your arterial landscape code requirements. So it's just an exchange from one to the other. The driveway easement on page I think it's page 11, is a 24-foot easement located in the southeast corner of the property on Tudor Road. It was there originally to serve one of the lots that we're combining into one, so the need for it is no longer there. But since it was part of a plat, the requirement is we will go through a vacation process as part of the plat. So, the development, of course, is a planned Walgreens development, and access for that development has been worked out with access agreements with the current lot owners, both to the north and to the east of this property. Those agreements are in place, though they haven't been fully executed, subject to the final purchase agreement being completed. However, the agreements have been signed and are waiting this whole process to be completed. So with that, unless you have some questions, I'll reserve the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. High? Oh, Mr. Cole, thank you.
I just have one question, and that is through the chair. There's a number of conditions that have been set forth. Are you in agreement with those? Disagreement with any? Your position on that?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Cole, no, I should have mentioned that. We are in full agreement with the conditions as set forth by recommendations by staff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Walker.
I noticed that in your request you were wanting to vacate 3 items. The existing 6-foot arterial, the 24-foot access easement, and the 15-foot sanitary sewer easement. But staff is only recommending that we address 2 of those because you'll address the other in a separate document, correct?
That's correct.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner's representative? Thank you. You have 8 minutes and 30 seconds left for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public who wishes to testify tonight? Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Wes Sutherland, Sutterlin.
Thank you.
I learned about this from the mailing that was sent out several weeks ago, and my first or several concerns are that when we went through the Tudor and Lake Otis rebuilding, there was a great deal of emphasis put on traffic calming in the area, especially on 42nd Avenue. And with this development, all of the cars are going to come out of the property onto Lake Otis. And since 3/4 of them will have come from one of the other directions, they're going to have to go down 42nd Street, either 1 or 2 blocks, where there are no sidewalks and a great deal of pedestrian traffic, in order to re-access Lake Otis and choose their one of 3 directions, or 4, as the case may be. And that's one of my primary concerns, is that was one of the primary reasons for the traffic calming initiation, and with all the work we did with Dowell, et cetera, with Tudor and Lake Otis. Since the completion of Lake Otis and Tudor, things have been very quiet on 42nd Street, and that's where I live. And it's been a real blessing to have that change. Excuse me. Secondly, with regards to the notification of the community councils, although this is in the University Area Community Council, with the Tudor and Lake Otis development, all 3 of the community councils that abut the intersection there were contacted, and they all had, and I attended many meetings of those community councils. There's the Tudor Area Community Council and the Campbell Park Community Council. And given, I don't know how far in advance they were notified, but none of them had any meetings since the notification I received. So there was no opportunity for any of them to give any input to this development. I thought I read somewhere in the document that there was going to be no access either to or perhaps from Tudor, and yet I see from the diagrams that there is access off of Tudor. And that's in an area where the speed limit is significant, and it's a very short driveway. I'm concerned about that. Now, I don't doubt the need for development in the area, but I think that by combining these 2 lots into one, it's going to create more traffic in the area than is needed. It's going to be difficult to get in and out. And I think that there are probably other locations that would be as suitable for this type of development along Tudor, which would be more beneficial. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. How do you pronounce your name again?
Sutherland.
Mr. Sutherland. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public who wishes to testify tonight? This is your opportunity. We are here to hear you. Hearing and seeing none. Mr. High, would you like to use your time for rebuttal?
I don't want to take up too much time here, but I did want to make sure that the issues that were raised by Mr. Sutherland have been addressed in your minds anyway. I'll make a comment on the access for Tudor Road. We're not creating a new access there totally. We're working with a neighbor to take the existing access and reconfiguring it so that it works for both properties. We are increasing traffic. Of course, Walgreens are not huge developments, but there will be some increase in traffic. But we do have two access points, not just on Lake Otis. We do have one coming out on the Tudor Road there at the southeast corner of the site, and then another access onto Lake Otis just north of our proposed property line. I don't know how to answer the question about community councils. We have been in the process, so I assume that's just part of their own schedules. So in terms of traffic calming, I guess my answer to that is well, we're not creating a diamond center there at that corner. It's a small deal. It is a medical facility. It's a Walgreens drugstore type thing, and it does kind of fit into that medical facilities located in that Lake Otis Tudor area. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. High? Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, Mr. Hyde, just for clarification, these access points onto Tudor and Lake Otis, they're in-out access, meaning they're two-way access into the site and off of the site at each location?
In and out at both locations.
Yes.
Yes, they're right only off of Tudor, and I believe off of Lake Otis. I can't remember how far down that median comes there, but I believe I need to ask the petitioner. It's a right only. So on Lake Otis, it's a right only in and a right only out, and on Tudor, it's the same.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Wait, there's more questions.
I'm sorry.
If not, I have one. Mr. Cole, did you have a question?
Through the chair, when you indicated that you publicized this, which I assume it shows, did you attend any of the community council meetings? Have you been through that process and dealing with any of them?
In this case, I didn't attend any. I didn't see any. I was watching the reports come back in, and I didn't see any adverse comments there, so we didn't attend any. I'm not sure that there were any held. Thanks.
Okay.
I guess it's nope. Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address some of the public comments and just speak to it so that everybody's sort of on the same page. So the property is zoned B3 General Business District, and the intent of the B3 district is general retail. There's a lot of business type uses that are allowed on that district. It's meant for major arterial intersections, so it's actually the intent of the district is defined for just this sort of situation. So that's the zoning. It can be developed currently, the property owner seeking to remove an interior lot line to combine two lots, but it can be developed as is, potentially with the Walgreens, without this subdivision. This re-subdivision, 2 lots into 1, the petitioner is entitled to that. He meets all the regulations, the subdivision regulations. The vacations are also being requested here, but it's really just sort of cleaning up the property for redevelopment. 46th Avenue has been, my understanding is, has seen a lot of cut-through traffic from between Lake Otis and Piper. People sort of rushing to Providence Hospital and the medical campus there, and it's been a real problem. And I know that the traffic department's aware of that. You may have driven the newly constructed, relatively newly constructed 40th Avenue, which was the intent of building that new road between Piper, and there's a roundabout now, to Lake Otis. The intent was to help relieve some of that cut-through traffic, and that road's specifically designed for all the traffic going to the hospital. So hopefully that's helping out the neighborhood a little bit. As far as notification, as soon as the application to subdivide is turned into the planning office, we route it to all the reviewing agencies and the affected community councils. That's the first, even before planners see the case or the file is made, it's mailed to the community councils. The petitioner had to post signs at each of the abutting rights-of-way. So there's blue signs at the rights-of-way. And then the public hearing notices, the letters were mailed out to all the properties within 600 feet of the petition site. Some of the community councils don't meet in the summertime, and that's a problem. We always encourage applicants or people seeking to come before the boards and commissions to go to the community councils in sort of controversial cases for conditional uses or rezones. It's highly encouraged. In terms of the driveway, I think that's already been covered. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to try and address them. Thanks.
Mr. Cole.
Through the chair. So if there's only, right out and right in, could that decrease the traffic going along 46th?
So there's a right-in, right-out on Tudor and a right-in, right-out on Lake Otis. And it's because of those dividers and because of the speed of the traffic and not being able to make a left turn safely, right? So traffic mobility is a problem on Tudor Road and on this block. And the public comments rightly point out that there's been cut-through traffic, primarily people trying to get to the hospital, but the public might correct me and say no, it's people that miss their turn onto Tudor and need to. Yeah, it's just a problem, and people have to find a way to get back around. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's just a situation that can't be solved by this plat. It's not helped or hurt by this plat.
Mr. Walker, and then Mr. Fuller, and then Mr. Kange.
There presently is a used car lot using the property, correct? So there's already traffic on this particular corner?
Yes, currently there's a park and sell car lot, and there are there's one curb cut to Lake Otis currently.
And they're using the same access ways that are basically going to be used in the future for this operation?
From Tudor Road, the access is going to remain the same or similar. On the access to Lake Otis will change. The current curb cut to Lake Otis will be reconstructed into a barrier curb, and there's an existing curb cut further north, and that's the one that they're going to utilize. It's on the property to the north, and that exists.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, in observing this 42nd Avenue challenge, isn't there a new bypass, a road that connects to Lake Otis a little farther north, 40th, or?
That's correct.
That is a lighted intersection that would take you quicker to the hospital area?
That's correct. There's no stop signs.
No stop sign.
It's a sort of a straight shot. It's a road constructed and meant for. There's no residences abutting it. There's no driveways
So
to
as
it.
people get familiar with that, they'll know that's the more efficient way to go instead of 42nd.
We hope, yeah.
And Mr. Cage.
I think you, through the chair, maybe staff or the petitioner's representative could answer this one. I noticed that municipal traffic didn't have any other comments aside from resolving the lack of site access. Did the DOT have any problem? I know they mentioned no new ingress egress off of Tudor, but will this plan that you have in place suffice for DOT's requirements?
I'd like to field that one. I think that the traffic engineers are looking forward to the combining of these two lots into one, because DOT is sort of required to allow driveways to these lots, and even when they don't want to on arterial roads. And so there's the potential for having two curb cuts from these two lots onto Lake Otis, and now both of them will the existing curb cut's going to go away. These two lots are going to become one, and then they're actually going to be using an access to a lot that's even further north.
Okay, thank you. And so if DOT doesn't approve that current access, then Petitioner, you have other plans for the ingress egress to this lot?
Let's say the current access you're talking about is the proposed one to the north. Yeah, that was worked out with DOT to put it in there at that location ahead of all this work that we're currently doing. So DOT's had there's been a lot of coordination with the redevelopment process that occurred at that intersection.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, and this is probably a question for both the petitioner and staff. Traffic going south on Lake Otis, how would they access this site?
They, Mr. Chair, Mr. Edmondson, they would, I have to think about that for a second, south on Lake Otis.
You're headed south on Lake Otis, headed towards Tudor. How would you access the site? How would you access the Walgreens?
You'd have to go down to the next intersection and come back around on Tudor, or you have to go north and loop around, come back down on Lake Otis. There's no way for them to access it directly from that intersection as you're going south. Same thing as you're going on Tudor as you go east, right? It's a common problem with these heavy.
So is there the potential that, we heard public comment that there could be some increased traffic on, I believe it's 42nd Avenue. Would it be possible that people would drive down 42nd to Tudor to come back around to get to the site? Is that the most logical access point?
It's I have to kind of picture that for a second, but it's possible. I don't think we're I think the point here though is we're not really increasing traffic here all that much. I was trying to find a development plan in the packet here, but the point was made that there's an existing used car lot that brings in traffic there currently, and yes, we're putting in a Walmart that will, not a Walmart, a Walgreens that will increase the traffic there. There's no question that we'll get there, but it's probably not significant. And in our work with DOT in terms of trying to get these driveway accesses, they did look at those numbers. Sorry, I don't have them on top of my head, but they. And I don't think they addressed, by the way, I don't think they addressed that 42nd Avenue issue there. So there's a potential here that isn't addressed. But I'm not sure this development could address it adequately to start with. This is probably a little bit bigger issue for the community.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the plat is going to change the traffic on the 42nd, no matter whether there's a Walgreens there or a used car lot there. I think that's going to change. The fact that there's going to be traffic on 42nd to get to this corner could increase, or there could be some traffic on 42nd that there may already be to access this lot. So, at any rate, it's the one thing I could see as I was looking at this, that there could be some traffic on 42nd to access going south. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the petitioner's representative? I guess it's my turn.
Oh.
So was there a traffic study that was done for this plat?
No, there was not.
And did the city...
Let me just check with the petitioner, because this has been ongoing since 2002, and ahead of this plat, there's been a lot of meetings. So if you may I confirm? No, there's not. But in the Walgreen development process, they've been requested to do one, and so hopefully maybe this issue can be resolved at that time. There's other engineers involved in that, and I know that MOA has asked for a traffic study there, and I think the company involved is the Botte company that's going to complete that.
Thank you. And with respect to the noticing of this plat, either you or staff can answer this. Was the noticing done within the municipality standards, timely within the municipality standards?
Yes. If you don't have a copy of that, I brought some copies with me on the affidavit there. It should be at the last page of your packet. If it's not, I'd be happy to. You have it. Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
So we tried to put it up fairly early to give everybody notice there.
Mr. Chair, the sufficiency of notice, the requirements were met.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
The public hearing portion of this meeting is closed, and the matter now rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please, for this case? On page 6. Mr. Walker.
I move that we approve the vacation of the following easements. Do you want them separately, one by one, or both together?
I think the best way is to do item number 1 first, and then item number 2 as a second motion.
I move to approve the vacation of the easement subject to the recording of a final plat within 18 months for Lot 1, Lake Otis Tudor subdivision, specifically vacating the existing 6-foot arterial landscape easement on plat 2010-36 and the 24-foot access easement plat 2110-36.
Thank you. And Mr. Kane seconds. Mr. Walker, would you speak to your motion, please?
With respect to vacation of the 6-foot easement, I believe that vacating where it's drawn on the map plat and having it rededicated nearer the lot line is appropriate. The preliminary plat needs to show the landscape easement continues along that west line, and I believe that's a condition of approval in the conditions under number 2.
Thank you. Are there any discussion? Is there any opposition to this motion?
If I may, I guess because we're doing both of them, I should also probably speak to the 24-foot access easement. In support of that, the planning subdivision doesn't object to the vacation of the 24-foot access easement, mainly because the 2 lots are being combined, and so they'll have the single access points. I mean, the one lot will only need access points serving it, rather than having two separate properties.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, any additional discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. May I have a positive motion for item number 2, approval of the plat for 18 months? Mr. Cole, would you speak to your motion, please?
In the case of S11998-1 Turker subdivision, would move for the approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions A through I on pages 6 through 8. I'd be happy to read them to the record, but that should be sufficient.
Actually, there are also conditions on page 8. Oh,
A through I.
okay, thank you. And Mr. Walker seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
I intend to vote for this motion. It appears to me that that this meets the requirements that we have in front of us for approval. The city has set forth what they believe are appropriate conditions. They're supported by the facts, and the petitioner has agreed with all of them. And so under those circumstances, I would think it would be appropriate to approve the plat for 18 months, subject to those conditions.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion or findings? Mr. Walker.
I'd like to add some additional findings that I find that the plat request was properly noticed, posting of the property and notices to the affected parties. I'd also like to make findings with respect to the fact that there is existing traffic in the area related to business access on this specific parcel, that there's no substantial evidence presented that there was going to be much change necessarily with respect to the access use if this plat was approved, and that the conditions have been accepted by the petitioner. And for those reasons, I would approve the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other findings? I intend to support this motion, and in this hearing tonight, I discovered that DOT has been part of the process and has recommended these entry and exit points, that this is consistent with the DOT. The municipal traffic engineer has apparently requested a traffic study that will be forthcoming as part of Walgreens. Do I have that right? As part of Walgreens' development of this property. So any issues that remain can be resolved. And I also found that the ingress and egress were both right turn only from right in, right out on both Tudor and Lake Otis at locations that the DOT has approved, so that this would be as safe as they're going to be able to make it, and it's already an approved plat. If they didn't join these lots, they could still have those same access points. And for those reasons, I'm going to support this motion also. Mr. Walker, did you have another? Is there any other discussion or findings? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the Board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Planning Board becomes final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the Board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. The next case is case number S11994-1, Community Park, Alaska Subdivision. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a preliminary plat to subdivide one lot and one tract of land into one tract of land with the vacation of a portion of right-of-way known as Community Park Loop that intersects Lot 1 and Tract 3A, and the vacation of a 30-foot wide water easement located within Tract 3A, and the vacation of two 5-foot by 10-foot fire hydrant easements located within Tract 3A. The petition site is zoned PLI, Public Lands and Institutions District. The site is currently undeveloped with plans for development not yet known. The proposed tract meets the minimum standards as required in the PLI district. The property is located in Anchorage, north of Northern Lights Boulevard, west of Burgass Street, and east of Nichols Street. The topography is generally level with Class C wetlands found primarily in the lower lying areas of the property. Access is via Nichols Street, which is located west of the petition site. Existing Community Park Loop currently is constructed to municipal standards, but will require a cul-de-sac bulb at its terminus if the request for vacation is approved. The petitioner is required to construct to municipal standards a 30-foot wide paved street, back of curb to back of curb, including type 2 rolled curb and gutter, with a commercial cul-de-sac having a 57.5-foot radius to the back of the curb with a 50-foot return radius. Nichols Street is currently a strip paved section that lacks full urban right-of-way amenities. Because Nichols Street is consistent along its entire length from Northern Lights Boulevard to East 20th Avenue, no further improvements along this frontage are being recommended at this time. However, with the development of the proposed Tract 3A-1, peripheral street improvements will be required along its full frontage. I'd like to get to the vacation request at this time. As was stated earlier, the petitioner is proposing to vacate a portion of right-of-way known as Community Park Loop. They're also proposing to vacate a 30-foot wide water easement and two 5-foot by 10-foot fire hydrant easements. The vacation requests have been reviewed and are found to conform to the municipal vacation policy. With the plat, the petitioner wishes to combine Tract 3A and Lot 1 to create one tract. Access to this tract would be via cul-de-sac. Since the proposed tract would be provided legal and physical access to a publicly dedicated street, planning staff has no objection to this request to vacate the remaining portion of that right-of-way. With the vacation of this road right-of-way, the need for the two 5-foot by 10-foot fire hydrant easements and the 30-foot water easement no longer exists. Other reviewing agencies have expressed no objection to this vacation request. So with that said, staff would recommend approval of the vacation of right-of-way and easements as they appear to be excess to municipal need. Staff recommends approval of the plat and approval of the vacation subject to the conditions listed on pages 7, 8, and 9 of your staff packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Would the petitioner's representative please step forward, state your name for the record, spell your last name?
Good evening. My name is Ken Ayers, A-Y-E-R-S. I'm with Lounsbury and Associates, and I'm representing the Trust Land Office in this case tonight.
Mr. Ayers, would you like to reserve any time for rebuttal?
I'll reserve a minute and a half.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank staff for their presentation. Essentially, the Trust Land Office received this land back after the lawsuit settlement. This land was designed and improved back in the early 80s. The municipality actually did the subdivision. They created Community Park Loop. The problem with that is the subdivision design doesn't really work for any kind of development. There's a large power line that runs through the eastern portion of the property. Community Park Loop cuts through and makes it difficult to develop this property in any kind of manner. So what we're trying to accomplish here is to vacate the right-of-way, vacate the easements, have the maximum flexibility to do something with the southern 10 acres on this tract. The Trust Land Office owns all of the land surrounding Community Park Loop. They also own both the lots that are still remaining to the north, only one of which is developed. Community Park Loop has been blocked off for a number of years by the municipality, so it doesn't have to be maintained past the driveway access to Lot 2 on the north side. And essentially, we don't have any objection to staff's conditions. We do have a couple of minor clarifications that I would like to have read into the record. On condition recommendation number B2, entering into a subdivision agreement with private development for the required public urban area improvements and I'm going to add the words, to construct the cul-de-sac bulb for Community Park Loop. And then I would probably put circle in parens there because the name of the road will change. And then it would continue to include paved streets, curb and gutters. Would like to strike the word walkways. We don't have any walkways to construct to any other location. Street lighting, traffic control devices, etc., can continue as written. And then on condition 8F, I'd just like to clarify that it should read or add for Nickel Street after street improvements in the second sentence there. So it would read, any permanent development of tract 3A-1 will require peripheral street improvements for Nickel Street along its full frontage per AMC 2185070B2. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the petitioner's representative? I don't see any. We'll open this up for public testimony.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And you have 6 minutes and 6 seconds for rebuttal time. Oh, plus a minute and 30. Are there anybody from the public wishing to testify tonight?
Sir, I just have some questions.
Would you come to the podium and state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is Nancy Bale. I'm an employee at Whaley School, and I responded to the notice that was posted on the tree, so you did a good job. Thank you. I just wanted to know from the petitioner if you have a range of possible developments in mind or not at this time that you're free to speak about. And I also wanted to ask, it's unclear to me if that loop is being vacated, then whatever development occurs, the access to it would be on the already built part of Community Park, Loop, Circle, whatever it's going to be. You know, the already built road that goes into the TAB building currently. That would be the access to any future development if you're vacating the easement for the other half of Community Park Loop. Those are just questions I have that weren't clearly answered by the write-up.
We'll allow the petitioner to address those during the rebuttal time. Do you have any other any
Well,
bring
as
forward?
part of a project at school this year, I've been studying safe routes to schools in the neighborhood. You know, you're aware that Assets and the ARC and a lot of community service agencies, including the Mental Health Trust, are in the vicinity, and also Whaley School, and also East High and Russian Jack. So there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, and I've been wanting to go to traffic safety and advocate for improvements to Nichols as soon as they can occur. Because in the winter, there are very small shoulders on Nichols, and then there are ditches that are drainage ditches because Chester Creek is rerouted in that area. And so when it snows heavily and the plows come through, the berms pretty much impinge on the paved part of the street, which means the kids walking back and forth there are walking in the street. The other thing about Nichols, and I know you're the Platting Board and you're not the board to hear this, but the other thing about Nichols is that it is used similarly to 42nd as a cut street for people rushing to work on Bregaw, wanting to make it to Northern Lights without waiting at the Bregaw intersection. So there are vehicles going through that 25-mile-per-hour street every day at a high rate of speed, and kids walking in the street. So my hope for Nichols is that its improvements do not have to wait for anything that happens from this plat. I hope the improvements would come sooner. But otherwise, I just have questions about your plans for development and the access to it, and that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there anyone else from the public wishing to testify tonight? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Ayers, you have 7 minutes and 36 seconds for.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions after the hearing as well, but there are no plans for development. What they're trying to do is eliminate this right-of-way and the easement so that they can market the property. They missed a couple opportunities that came along for developing on this property. Should development occur, there's zoning restrictions on the uses that are already there. The development plan would be developed and would have to go through a public process for site planning. The trust land office has pretty strict development rules and so on and so forth. So there's really no plans to develop it. We're just trying to put it into a position where something can be done with it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Ayers?
Thank you.
Guess not. Mr. Walker? Mr. Ayers, or Mr. Walker has a question for you. Go ahead, Mr. Walker.
I'm sorry, Mr. Walker, could you speak into your mic? I have a hard time hearing. Thank you.
But if I turn it on. Could you go over those amendments to the requests that you had? I didn't get them written down.
Absolutely. On recommendation B2,
Right.
what I'm trying to do is add the words to construct the cul-de-sac bulb for community park loop and the word circle in parens after the words public urban area improvements.
And through the chair, where is staff on this recommendation?
Through the chair, Mr. Walker, we've spoke with the petitioner's representative, and staff has no objection to the modifications presented by the petitioner's representative.
Thank you. And the second one was down on page 8, and that's item 8.
Actually, through the chair, Mr. Walker, I also asked to scratch the word walkways from B2.
B2. Okay.
And then on item 8F, as in Foxtrot, I'm asking to add the word for Nichols Street after peripheral street improvements.
I'd like to, you have a copy of the plat drawing? If I could turn your attention to the vicinity map. I think this particular plat should be above the Northern Lights Drive instead of below the Northern Lights Drive. I think this is actually north.
Through the chair, Mr. Walker, in this reduced copy, I can't actually see that level of detail, but if it's incorrect, we will have it corrected for the final plat.
Okay, so I can make, with respect to item 9B, we could add item 2 under there to correct the location in the vicinity map.
That's
I don't have anything further.
Is there any other questions? I have one more question. This is of staff. On item 2B, is it acceptable to cross out the word walkways with staff?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's acceptable. The road is currently constructed without walkways, and I think that the intent here is just to add the cul-de-sac bulb and leave it as existing.
Thank you. I have no more questions. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
The public hearing portion of the, hold on a second. Public hearing portion of this meeting is closed. The matter now rests with the board, and I would entertain a positive motion for approval. Mr. Walker and Mr. Edmondson is going to second. Mr. Walker, would you speak to, or would you state your motion, please?
I move to approve the request for vacations of a portion of the right-of-way Community Park Loop, intersection Lot 1, Track 3A, the 30-foot wide water easement located within Track 3A, and the two 5-foot by 10-foot fire hydrant easements located within Track 3A. And this relates to case number S11994-1, the Community Park Alaska subdivision.
Thank you. Mr. Edmondson, you still second this? Yes. Mr. Walker, would you speak to your motion, please?
I find that this is a subdivision that was originally created by the city back in the 80s, that basically it's a design that isn't developable or marketable, apparently. That the best use of the property would be to allow the combining of these lots to possibly advance the development of the property so that the walkways that the public has requested could possibly be developed in the future, and that the joining the lots would eliminate the need for the easements that are being requested to be vacated. Accordingly, I don't see that there is any value in retaining those easement rights and not allowing the vacation.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Mr. Edmondson.
I'd just like to add to the findings that there was no objections by any of the agencies that reviewed these vacations.
Thank you. Any additional findings or discussion? I'm going to add that the staff found that the right-of-way easements are access to the municipal needs, and the vacation request was found to conform with the municipal vacation policy. Is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. And I would entertain a motion for item number B, approval of the plat for 18 months. Mr. Walker.
I move that as to case S11994-1, that the approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to the conditions stated on page 7 through 9, be approved with the following 3 changes. With respect to item B2 on page 7, I believe it should read, entering into a subdivision agreement with private development for the required public urban area improvements to construct the cul-de-sac bulb to include paved streets, curbs, and gutters, street lighting, traffic control devices, monuments, drainage facilities, utilities, and any traffic section improved requirements. With respect to item 8F, let me go back to, I guess, B2 again. Entering into a subdivision agreement with private development for the required public urban area improvements to construct the cul-de-sac bulb for Community Park Loop Circle to include paved streets, curbs and gutters, street lighting, traffic control devices, monuments, drainage facilities, utilities, and any traffic section improvement requirements. Turning to 8F, that it should state any permanent development of Tract 3A1 will require peripheral street improvements for Nickel Street along its full frontage per AMC 2185-070B2. And that with respect to 9B, there should be a second double I in there, that the location in the vicinity map should be corrected to put the parcel above or north of which street is that again? Northern Lights Boulevard.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson, seconds?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Including
Including the amendments.
The amendments. Is there any discussion? Any questions of staff? Any additional findings? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the Board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice to appeal. Rather than read the last paragraph, I'm going to state that there's nobody in the audience. They've all left. Are there any, so that, and then the other case was postponed?
You might go ahead and add the last paragraph.
Okay.
If there might be people on the internet or watching out.
Okay,
right?
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walker. I will complete the last paragraph. Adoption of the written decision by the Planning Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the Board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. Thank you.
Any reports?
Are there?
Last page. Next.
I'm looking. Are there any appearance requests? No. Are there any other requests? Are there any persons to be heard tonight? I see none. Are there any reports from the chair? No. From the secretary? No. We don't have a committee. At least currently we don't. Are there any, this is an opportunity for board member comments. Are there any board member comments?
I move that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? So moved.